It's January 1945 in France, and a young soldier named Audie Murphy is watching the forest when he sees something that makes his blood run cold. He's only 20 years old, weighs just 112 pounds, and stands 5 feet 5 inches tall, which is really short for a soldier. But right now, size doesn't matter because he's staring at 6 German tanks rolling out of the forest with 250 German soldiers marching straight toward his position. Murphy looks around at his own men and does a quick count in his head. He has only 18 soldiers left to face this massive force. Just 18 men against 250 enemies and 6 tanks. And he knows they don't stand a chance in a direct fight. The first German shells start landing around them, and his men scramble for cover as explosions tear up the frozen ground. Behind Murphy, about 200 yards back, there's a tank destroyer that's on fire with black smoke pouring from the engine and ammunition still inside that could explode at any moment. Murphy makes a decision that seems absolutely crazy. He orders his men to fall back and save themselves. And then he does something nobody expected by climbing onto that burning tank, completely alone, and grabbing the machine gun mounted on top of it. For the next hour, this 112-pound soldier fights off the entire German attack by himself while standing on a vehicle that could blow up and kill him any second. And somehow he survives to tell the story. But how did this happen? How did such a small guy, who got rejected by the Marines, the Navy, and the Paratroopers, become America's greatest war hero, with more medals than any other soldier in history? To understand that incredible transformation, we need to go back to the beginning and see where Audie Murphy really came from. It's June 20th, 1925, in Kingston, Texas, and a baby boy is born in a tiny sharecropper's shack that has no electricity, no running water, and barely enough room for the family that's trying to survive there. His name is Audie Leon Murphy, and he's the 7th of 12 children born to a poor farmer named Emmett Murphy, who can barely feed his massive family and spends most of his time either working in the fields or drinking himself into a rage. Audie's mother, Josie Bell Murphy, does everything she possibly can to hold the family together, but there's only so much one woman can do when you have 12 hungry mouths to feed and absolutely no money coming in. Audie grows up in the kind of poverty that's hard to imagine today. And when we say dirt poor, we mean it literally because they have actual dirt floors in their house. The children don't have shoes to wear, and sometimes they don't have any food for days at a time, just going to bed hungry and waking up hungry again. Audie is stuck in the middle of this huge, struggling family, and his childhood looks nothing like a normal kid's life because he starts picking cotton for just 5 cents a day when he's only 5 years old, working all day in the burning Texas sun. By the time Audie is 10 years old, he has to drop out of school after finishing only 5th grade because the family desperately needs him to work and bring in any money he can. He starts hunting with a borrowed rifle to put food on the table, and it's not a hobby or a sport if he doesn't bring home a rabbit or a squirrel. His younger brothers and sisters simply don't eat that day. So Audie learns to shoot, and he becomes incredibly good at it because every bullet costs money they don't have, which means every single shot has to count, and he absolutely cannot afford to miss. By the time he's 12 years old, Audie Murphy can hit a running rabbit from 100 yards away, track deer through thick woods without making a sound, and shoot birds out of the sky mid-flight. He's not doing this for fun or to show off. He's doing it for pure survival, learning skills that will one day make him the most lethal soldier America has ever seen, though nobody knows that yet. Then, in 1936, when Audie is just 11 years old, things go from bad to absolutely terrible because his father, Emmett Murphy, just walks out the door one day and never comes back. He abandons his wife and 12 children without any explanation, leaving them completely alone in the middle of the Great Depression, with no income and no way to survive. Now it's just Josie and 12 kids living in a falling apart shack with no help coming from anywhere, and Audie has to become the man of the house at 11 years old. He hunts every day to feed his siblings, takes any odd job he can possibly find, and does absolutely whatever it takes to keep his brothers and sisters alive. But no matter how hard he works or how many animals he brings home, it's simply not enough to keep the family together and fed. The weight of responsibility crushes down on this young boy who should be playing and going to school, but instead he's trying to be a father to 11 other children. Then, on May 23rd, 1941, when Audie is 16 years old, his mother, Josie Belle Murphy, dies from health problems caused by a lifetime of backbreaking work and grinding poverty. She literally worked herself to death trying to keep her family together, and at her funeral, Audie stands there and makes a solemn promise that he's going to take care of his younger brothers and sisters no matter what it takes. But here's the brutal reality he's facing. He's only 16 years old, weighs barely 100 pounds, only went to school until 5th grade, and has no skills except hunting and farm work. He wants to keep the family together, but he has no way to do it. And the younger children end up getting sent to an orphanage, while Audie watches helplessly, unable to stop it from happening. That's the moment when something hardens inside Audie Murphy, and he decides that he's going to make something of himself and become somebody important. He's going to prove to the world that a poor, skinny kid from nowhere can actually matter and accomplish great things, even though right now he has absolutely nothing going for him except determination. Then, on December 7th, 1941, everything changes when the Japanese attack Pearl Harbor and America enters World War II. Audie is working at a radio repair shop in Greenville, Texas, when he hears the news over the radio, and even though he's only 16 years old and technically too young to enlist in the military, he doesn't care about the rules. The very next day, December 8th, he walks into a Marine Corps recruiting office because he wants to join the fight and do something important with his life. The Marine recruiter takes one look at this scrawny teenager standing in front of him, 5 feet 5 inches tall, weighing maybe 100 pounds, with a baby face that makes him look even younger than he is. And the recruiter just shakes his head and says no. "Sorry, son, but you're way too small, and the Marines need real men who can handle combat," the recruiter tells him. And just like that, Audie gets rejected. But Audie Murphy doesn't give up that easily. So he walks down the street and tries to join the Navy instead, hoping they'll have different standards. The Navy recruiter looks him up and down and gives him the same answer. "You're too small and too light. We need sailors who can do heavy physical labor on ships." And Audie gets rejected for the second time in one day. Still refusing to quit, he tries the Paratroopers next, thinking maybe they need smaller guys who can jump out of planes. But the paratrooper recruiter just laughs and tells him, "You're too light. You can't jump out of planes at your size. The wind would blow you away." And now Audie has been rejected 3 times by 3 different branches of the military. But here's the thing about Audie Murphy that makes him different from most people. His entire life, every single day, people have been telling him that he's too small, too poor, not strong enough, not good enough, and won't amount to anything. And every single time someone told him he couldn't do something, he went out and proved them completely wrong. So these rejections just make him more determined to find a way to serve his country. Finally, on June 30th, 1942, about 7 months after Pearl Harbor, the United States Army decides to accept Audie Murphy into their ranks. They don't accept him because they think he's going to be a good soldier, or because they see some special potential in him. They accept him simply because the war is expanding rapidly and they're getting desperate for bodies to fill uniforms. Audie is 17 years old now, though he's still technically underage because he lied about his birth year on the enlistment papers. He still weighs only 112 pounds soaking wet and looks like he should be sitting in a high school classroom, not heading off to war. He gets sent to Fort Walters in Texas for basic training. And when the drill sergeants see this skinny little kid walk into their camp, they take one look at him and figure he'll wash out and quit within a week. They've seen plenty of tough-looking farm boys and city kids break down and go home, so they're absolutely certain this tiny teenager won't make it through the brutal training regimen. But then, something completely unexpected happens during basic training that shocks everyone, including the instructors. Audie Murphy turns out to be a natural-born soldier who's better at this than almost anyone they've ever seen. Remember, this is a kid who's been shooting rifles and hunting animals since he was 8 years old to keep his family from starving. He spent years tracking game through the Texas woods, learning to move silently and invisibly, because a spooked deer or a missed shot meant his little brothers and sisters would go to bed hungry that night. On the rifle range, Audie shoots expert marksman scores on his very first attempt, putting bullets exactly where he wants them, at distances that other recruits struggle with. During field exercises, where they practice moving through terrain, he glides through the woods like a ghost, barely making a sound while other soldiers crash through the brush. In tactical training, where they learn how to think like soldiers and outsmart the enemy, Audie is always thinking 3 or 4 steps ahead of everyone else, seeing opportunities and dangers that others miss completely. The training instructors start paying very close attention to this skinny kid from Texas, and they realize that he's not just good at being a soldier. He's absolutely exceptional at it in ways they've rarely seen. There's something about the way he moves, the way he shoots, and the way he thinks that marks him as special. Though nobody can predict yet just how special he's going to become. In February 1943, Audie completes his advanced infantry training with top marks, and he gets assigned to Company B of the 15th Infantry Regiment, which is part of the 3rd Infantry Division. The Army ships him out with his new unit, and his destination list reads like a tour of the war's worst battlefields. First North Africa, then Sicily, then Italy, then France. He's heading into a meat grinder of combat that will kill or wound most of the men he serves alongside, and the chances of surviving all those campaigns are incredibly slim. But that baby-faced kid, who everyone said was too small to be a soldier, who got rejected 3 times before the army finally took him out of desperation. He's about to walk into the fires of war and emerge as the most lethal, most decorated, and most legendary American soldier in the entire history of the United States military. Though right now, he's just a scared teenager who's never been in a real fight and has no idea what's waiting for him across the ocean. In July 1943, Audie Murphy and his unit land in North Africa, which is supposed to be a relatively safe place for new soldiers to get their first taste of combat before heading into the really dangerous fighting. But even here, in what's considered a quiet sector, Audie gets his first real look at what war actually means when he sees his first dead bodies, smells the awful stench of death mixed with gunpowder, and realizes that this isn't anything like hunting rabbits back in Texas. The 3rd Infantry Division doesn't stay in North Africa for long before they get new orders. And in September 1943, they ship out to invade Sicily as part of the massive Allied campaign to push into Europe from the south. This is where Audie Murphy transforms from a nervous new soldier into something else entirely. Because combat has a way of revealing who people really are when the bullets start flying and men start dying all around them. During the Sicily campaign, Audie's unit gets pinned down by German machine gun fire that's tearing through their position and killing men left and right. Most soldiers would keep their heads down and wait for someone else to do something. But Audie sees where the machine gun nest is located, and without asking permission or waiting for orders, he just gets up and starts moving toward it. He crawls through the dirt, uses every bit of cover he can find, gets close enough to throw grenades into the German position, and single-handedly takes out the machine gun that was killing his friends. His lieutenant watches this skinny kid from Texas eliminate an entire enemy position by himself, and right there, he realizes that Private Murphy isn't like other soldiers. There's something different about him, something almost predatory in the way he hunts enemy soldiers. Audie gets promoted to corporal after that fight, which is just the first of many promotions coming his way, because the Army quickly figures out that this small, unassuming soldier is worth his weight in gold on the battlefield. The fighting in Sicily is brutal and bloody, with house-to-house combat in towns that get reduced to rubble and fields that turn into killing zones. Audie watches men he trained with get shot, blown apart by artillery, and die screaming for their mothers, and each death hardens something inside him. He starts to change in ways that worry some of his fellow soldiers because he becomes colder, more focused, and almost mechanical in the way he kills enemy soldiers without any visible emotion. But here's what people don't understand about Audie Murphy. Every German soldier he kills is one less threat to his friends, one less enemy who might kill the guys in his unit who are the closest thing to family he has left. He's not killing because he enjoys it or because he's a psychopath. He's killing to protect the people he cares about, using the same survival instincts that kept his siblings fed back when he was hunting in Texas. After Sicily falls to the Allies, Audie and the 3rd Infantry Division get new orders to invade mainland Italy in September 1943. landing at Salerno in what becomes one of the bloodiest beach assaults of the entire war. German forces are dug into the hills overlooking the beach, and they pour down machine gun fire and artillery shells on the American soldiers trying to get off the beach and push inland. Audie runs through this storm of metal and explosions, watching men get cut down all around him. But somehow he makes it through without getting hit. The Italian campaign turns into month after month of grinding, exhausting combat as the Allies slowly push north through mountains and rivers and fortified German positions that turn every mile into a battle. Audie Murphy keeps fighting, keeps killing, and keeps surviving when so many others don't. And his reputation starts to grow among the men of the 3rd Infantry Division. They start calling him Baby Face because he still looks like a teenager, but they say it with respect now because they've seen what he can do when the shooting starts. In January 1944, near a place called Cisterna in Italy, Audie's unit gets caught in an ambush by German forces, and the situation goes from bad to worse in seconds. They're taking fire from multiple directions. Men are getting hit, and the whole unit is about to get wiped out if someone doesn't do something immediately. Audie sees 2 German machine gun positions that are doing most of the damage, and once again, he doesn't wait for orders or ask permission. He just starts moving toward them. He crawls through a drainage ditch filled with freezing water and mud, gets within grenade range of the first machine gun nest, and takes it out with a perfect throw that lands right in the middle of the German position. The second machine gun swings around to try to kill him, but Audie is already moving to a new position, and he puts accurate rifle fire into the Germans before they can adjust their aim. He kills both machine gun crews by himself and saves his entire unit from being destroyed, and this time he gets promoted to sergeant and receives his first serious medal for valor. But the cost of all this fighting is starting to show on Audie Murphy in ways that people can see if they look closely. He's not sleeping well, jumping at sudden noises, and getting quieter and more withdrawn between battles. The things he's seen and done are piling up inside him, and there's no way to process the trauma when you're still in the middle of a war that never seems to end. His friends notice the change, but don't know what to say, because almost everyone is dealing with the same invisible wounds from months of continuous combat. In the spring of 1944, Audie catches malaria, which is a deadly disease that soldiers can pick up in Italy from mosquito bites, and it nearly kills him. He spends weeks in a military hospital burning up with fever, shaking with chills, and losing even more weight from his already thin frame. The doctors tell him he's done with combat, that he's going home, that he's earned his ticket out of this nightmare. But when Audie recovers enough to stand up, he refuses to go home and demands to return to his unit, because the men of Company B are his family now, and he's not going to abandon them. He gets back to his unit in time for the invasion of southern France in August 1944, which is called Operation Dragoon, and involves thousands of American soldiers landing on beaches and pushing inland against German resistance. By now, Audie Murphy is a staff sergeant and has earned a reputation as the most dangerous soldier in the entire 3rd Infantry Division, someone the other men want on their side when things get bad. He's killed dozens of enemy soldiers, destroyed multiple machine gun nests, and survived situations that killed almost everyone else around him. During the fighting in France, Audie's best friend, a soldier named Laddie Tipton from Tennessee, gets shot right next to him during a German counterattack. Audie tries to save him, dragging him to cover while bullets snap past their heads. But Laddie dies in his arms before they can get him to a medic. Something breaks inside Audie Murphy that day, and the already cold and mechanical soldier becomes even more ruthless and focused on killing every German he can find, as if he can somehow avenge his dead friend by eliminating the enemy. He gets promoted to second lieutenant in October 1944, which makes him one of the youngest officers in the entire U.S. Army, and he takes command of a platoon in Company B. The men he's now leading are glad to have him because they've seen him in action and know that he'll do whatever it takes to keep them alive, even if it means putting himself in incredible danger. Audie leads from the front, never asking his men to do anything he won't do himself, and his platoon starts racking up an impressive combat record. By January 1945, the 3rd Infantry Division is pushing through eastern France near the German border, fighting in freezing winter conditions against German forces that are desperately trying to hold back the Allied advance. The snow is deep, the cold is brutal, and the fighting is some of the worst they've experienced, because the Germans know they're defending their homeland now, and they're fighting with the desperation of men who have nothing left to lose. On January 26, 1945, Audie Murphy and his platoon are ordered to hold a position near the small French town of Holtzwihr, which sits on the edge of the Colmar pocket, where thousands of German troops are trapped but still fighting. His company has been fighting for days, with barely any rest. They're running low on ammunition, and they're down to just about 40 men when they should have over 100. Audie can see that his men are exhausted, cold, and scared, but they trust him to get them through this because he's gotten them through everything else so far. At 2:30 p.m. on that freezing January afternoon, Audie is scanning the tree line through his binoculars when he sees something that makes his stomach drop. 6 German tanks are rolling out of the forest about 1,000 yards away, and behind them he can see hundreds of German infantry soldiers advancing in a coordinated attack. He does a quick count and realizes he's looking at roughly 250 enemy soldiers plus armor support, and his entire company has maybe 40 men in fighting condition with no tank support of their own. Audie immediately gets on the radio to call for artillery support and reinforcements, but the response he gets is devastating. There are no reinforcements available. The artillery is already engaged supporting other units, and Company B is basically on their own. He looks at his men, looks at the approaching German force, and does the math in his head, and he knows there's absolutely no way they can hold this position against that kind of attack without getting completely wiped out. He makes the hardest decision of his military career and orders most of his men to fall back to a better defensive position, about 200 yards behind their current location, because staying where they are would just mean dying for no reason. But he keeps a few men with him to try to delay the German advance and give the others time to get set up in the new position, knowing that he's volunteering to face overwhelming odds with just a handful of soldiers. The German tanks keep coming closer, their machine guns starting to fire, and their artillery shells begin landing around Audie's position, with devastating accuracy. Within minutes, the few men he kept with him are either dead or wounded. And Audie realizes he's the only one left who can still fight. Behind him, about 200 yards back, there's an M10 tank destroyer that got hit earlier in the day and has been burning on and off, with smoke still pouring from its damaged engine and ammunition still stored inside that could explode at literally any moment. Audie Murphy looks at that burning tank destroyer, looks at the 6 German tanks and 250 soldiers advancing toward his position, and makes a decision that seems absolutely insane to anyone watching. He runs through machine gun fire and exploding shells, climbs up onto that burning M10 tank destroyer that could blow up and vaporize him at any second, and takes control of the .50 caliber machine gun that's mounted on top of it. From his new position on top of the burning vehicle, Audie has a clear field of fire at the advancing Germans, and he opens up with the machine gun, sending streams of heavy bullets into the enemy formation. The Germans can't believe what they're seeing. A single American soldier standing on top of a burning vehicle, completely exposed, firing at them with a machine gun, while their tanks and infantry are trying to kill him. They pour fire at him from every direction, with bullets hitting the tank destroyer all around him, and shells exploding close enough to shower him with dirt and shrapnel. But Audie Murphy doesn't stop firing, doesn't take cover, doesn't run away like any sane person would do in that situation. He stands there on that burning tank, methodically cutting down German soldiers with precise bursts of machine gun fire, directing artillery strikes over the radio with his other hand, and somehow managing to avoid getting killed, despite being the most obvious target on the entire battlefield. The tank destroyer under his feet is so hot from the fire that he can feel the heat through his boots, and he knows the ammunition inside could cook off at any moment and turn him into a cloud of pink mist. For 1 full hour, Audie Murphy fights the entire German assault force by himself, killing soldier after soldier, forcing tanks to turn back, and breaking up their attack through sheer firepower and determination. At one point, a group of German soldiers gets close enough that he's shooting them at almost point-blank range, and they're so close he can see their faces as his bullets find them. He gets hit in the leg by a piece of shrapnel that tears through his muscle, but he doesn't stop firing, doesn't even slow down, just keeps working that machine gun and calling in artillery strikes. The German commanders can't understand what's happening. Their intelligence told them they were attacking a weakened American company with maybe 40 soldiers. But the volume of fire coming from that one position makes them think they've run into a much larger force. They start pulling back, reorganizing, trying to figure out what they're up against. And that hesitation is exactly what Audie needs to keep them off balance and prevent them from overrunning the American position. After an hour of continuous fighting that feels like an eternity, the ammunition on the M10 finally runs out, and Audie realizes he's done all he can from this position. The tank destroyer is burning even hotter now. Pieces of it are starting to fall apart from the heat, and he knows his luck is about to run out. He climbs down from the burning vehicle, and the moment his feet hit the ground, the tank destroyer explodes in a massive fireball that would have killed him instantly if he'd stayed on it for even 10 more seconds. Audie walks back to where his men are positioned, bleeding from his leg wound, covered in dirt and smoke, his uniform torn and scorched, and his men just stare at him in absolute disbelief. They watched him stand on that burning tank for an hour, fighting off an entire German battalion by himself, and they can't believe he's still alive. The German attack has been completely broken up and driven back, and Company B holds its position because one small soldier from Texas refused to let them lose. Later, when officers investigate what happened at Holtzwihr, they determine that Audie Murphy personally killed or wounded somewhere between 50 and 60 German soldiers during that 1-hour stand, directed artillery fire that killed many more, and single-handedly stopped an assault that should have overwhelmed the American position. It's the kind of action that seems impossible, that reads like fiction, but dozens of witnesses saw it happen and can confirm every detail. For his actions on January 26, 1945, Audie Murphy receives the Medal of Honor, which is the highest military decoration that the United States can award, given only for actions that go so far beyond the normal call of duty that they seem almost superhuman. He also receives the Distinguished Service Cross, 2 Silver Stars, the Legion of Merit, and multiple Bronze Stars and Purple Hearts, making him the most decorated American soldier of World War II, and possibly the most decorated American soldier in history. But the awards and medals don't mean much to Audie Murphy, because he's seen too many good men die, lost too many friends, and done too many terrible things that haunt his dreams. The war ends a few months later in May 1945, and Audie goes home to America as a genuine war hero. But the boy who left Texas in 1942 is gone forever, replaced by a man who's seen and done things that no human being should ever have to experience. When Audie Murphy comes home to America in the summer of 1945, he's only 21 years old, but he looks older, harder, and carries himself like a man who's seen things that most people can't even imagine. He's the most decorated American soldier of World War II, wearing more medals on his chest than soldiers twice his age, and the newspapers can't get enough of his story because Americans are hungry for heroes after 4 years of brutal war. Life magazine puts him on the cover in July 1945. And suddenly this quiet kid from Texas, who just wants to go home and rest, becomes a national celebrity, whether he wants to be or not. Reporters follow him around asking questions about the war. People stop him on the street to shake his hand and thank him for his service. And everyone wants to hear stories about his heroic actions. But Audie doesn't like talking about the war, doesn't enjoy reliving those memories, and finds the constant attention exhausting and uncomfortable. He tries to go back to Texas and live a normal life, but there's no such thing as normal anymore. For someone who's experienced what he experienced, he can't sleep through the night without nightmares about burning tanks and dying friends. He jumps at sudden loud noises that remind him of artillery shells, and he finds himself constantly scanning his surroundings for threats, even though he's safe in America. The war is over on the calendar, but it's still raging inside Audie Murphy's head every single day. A Hollywood actor named James Cagney sees Audie's picture on the cover of Life magazine and thinks this young war hero has an interesting face that might work on camera. So he invites Audie to come to California and try acting in movies. Audie has no acting experience, no training, and barely finished 5th grade. But he's got nothing else going on, and the nightmares are making it impossible to hold down a regular job, so he figures, why not give Hollywood a try? He moves to Los Angeles in 1945 and starts taking acting lessons, which is awkward and uncomfortable for someone who's more used to killing people than pretending to be someone else on camera. The first few years are tough because he's a terrible actor at the beginning, stumbling over lines and looking stiff on camera. But he keeps working at it because he's got the same determination that got him through the war. The movie studios, like having a real war hero around for publicity purposes, even if he can't act very well yet. In 1949, Audie gets cast in a movie called Bad Boy, which is a small film that nobody expects to do well. But something magical happens when the cameras start rolling. Audie Murphy is actually pretty good on screen. He's got a natural presence, a quiet intensity that comes from real experience. And audiences respond to his authenticity in ways they don't with regular actors who are just pretending. The movie does decent business, and suddenly Hollywood realizes that this war hero might actually have a future as a movie star. Throughout the late 1940s and early 1950s, Audie becomes a genuine Hollywood star, appearing in Western movies and war films that capitalize on his real-life heroism and his ability to play tough, quiet characters who use violence when necessary. He makes movies like The Red Badge of Courage and To Hell and Back, which is actually the story of his own life in World War II, where he plays himself on screen, reliving his combat experiences for the cameras in a weird sort of therapy that probably does more harm than good. To Hell and Back comes out in 1955 and becomes a massive hit, making Audie Murphy one of the biggest movie stars in America and telling his war story to millions of people who pack theaters to watch it. But making that movie forces Audie to relive every terrible moment of the war, to stand in mock battlefields and pretend to kill people again. And it tears open psychological wounds that never really healed in the first place. His nightmares get worse, his drinking increases, and the darkness inside him grows deeper. On the outside, Audie Murphy looks like he's got it made. He's a movie star, he's wealthy, he's married to a beautiful actress named Wanda Hendricks, and later to another woman named Pamela Archer, and he's famous across America. But on the inside, he's falling apart, fighting a war against his own memories that he can't seem to win. He starts sleeping with a loaded pistol under his pillow because the nightmares make him feel like he's back in combat. And his wife sometimes wakes up to find him pointing the gun at shadows that aren't really there. Audie becomes one of the first major public figures to talk openly about what we now call post-traumatic stress disorder, though back then they just called it battle fatigue or shell shock and didn't really understand it. He goes on television and tells reporters that he has nightmares every single night, that he can't escape the memories of the men he killed and the friends he watched die, and that the war never really ended for him, even though the fighting stopped in 1945. His honesty about his psychological struggles helps thousands of other veterans realize they're not alone and that what they're experiencing is real. He becomes addicted to sleeping pills because they're the only way he can get any rest without the nightmares waking him up screaming. And he develops a gambling problem that costs him huge amounts of money. The perfect war hero that America wants to celebrate is actually a deeply troubled man who's barely holding himself together, using pills and alcohol and gambling to try to quiet the voices in his head. But he keeps making movies, keeps appearing in public, keeps playing the role of the hero, because that's what people expect from him. In the 1960s, Audie's movie career starts to slow down as Hollywood changes and westerns go out of style. But he keeps working in whatever films will have him, because acting is the only thing he knows how to do besides soldiering. He appears in low-budget westerns and action films that don't make much money, and his star slowly fades as newer, younger actors take the spotlight. But he never complains about it, never demands better roles, just keeps showing up and doing the work. Despite all his struggles, Audie never forgets where he came from or the men he served with, and he spends years helping other veterans get the benefits and medical care they deserve from the government. He uses his fame to advocate for better treatment of soldiers with psychological problems, pushing the Veterans Administration to recognize that invisible wounds are just as real as physical injuries. His advocacy work helps change how America treats veterans with PTSD, though the progress is slow and frustrating. On May 28, 1971, Audie Murphy is flying in a small private plane through bad weather near Roanoke, Virginia, heading to a business meeting that he hopes will help solve some of his financial problems. The pilot is trying to navigate through thick fog and rain. The visibility is terrible, and nobody on the plane realizes how close they are to the mountains below them until it's too late. The plane crashes into the side of Brush Mountain, killing everyone on board instantly, including Audie Murphy at age 45. When news of his death spreads across America, the outpouring of grief is enormous because people remember him as the baby-faced war hero who stood on a burning tank and fought off an entire German battalion. President Richard Nixon orders flags flown at half-staff. Congress passes a resolution honoring his service, and thousands of people line up to pay their respects at his funeral. He's buried at Arlington National Cemetery with full military honors, and his grave becomes one of the most visited sites in the entire cemetery, second only to President John F. Kennedy's. Audie Murphy's headstone at Arlington is simple and dignified, listing his name, his rank, and the dates of his birth and death, but it doesn't mention all his medals or his Hollywood career or any of his accomplishments. Visitors leave flowers, coins, and small American flags at his grave every single day, honoring a man who represented both the best and the worst of what war does to people. He was a genuine hero who saved countless lives through his courage and skill. But he was also a victim of the trauma that war inflicts on everyone who experiences it. His legacy lives on in multiple ways that he never could have predicted when he was that poor kid from Texas trying to keep his siblings fed. The Veterans Administration eventually names their PTSD programs after him, recognizing his role in bringing attention to the invisible wounds of war. The U.S. Army names buildings and facilities in his honor, and multiple ships bear his name over the years. His story gets told and retold in books, documentaries, and articles that keep his memory alive for new generations. But perhaps the most important part of Audie Murphy's legacy is what he represented to the millions of ordinary soldiers who fought in World War II and every war since then. He proved that you don't have to be big or strong or from a wealthy family to do extraordinary things when the moment demands it. He showed that courage isn't about not being afraid, but about doing what needs to be done, even when you're terrified. And he demonstrated through his struggles after the war that even the strongest warriors can be broken by what they experience in combat, and that asking for help isn't weakness, but strength. That skinny kid from Texas who got rejected by the Marines, the Navy, and the Paratroopers for being too small, ended up becoming the most decorated American soldier in history, personally killing over 240 enemy soldiers during his combat service. The boy who grew up in a dirt floor shack with no shoes and no food became a Hollywood movie star and national hero. The man who could barely read or write beyond a 5th grade level became someone whose name is known by millions of people decades after his death. On that freezing January day in 1945, when Audie Murphy climbed onto a burning tank destroyer and fought off 250 German soldiers by himself, he was fighting for something bigger than medals, or glory, or recognition. He was fighting for the 18 men he ordered to fall back and save themselves, for the friends he'd watched die in Sicily and Italy and France, for the little brothers and sisters he couldn't save back in Texas, and for some kind of meaning in a world that had never given him anything except hardship and loss. He stood on that burning tank for 1 hour, knowing it could explode at any second, knowing he'd probably die, but refusing to let his friends down or let the enemy win. That's who Audie Murphy was at his core. Someone who refused to quit no matter how bad the odds, someone who protected the people he loved no matter the cost to himself, and someone who kept fighting long after most people would have given up. The war took almost everything from him, gave him nightmares that lasted until the day he died, and left him with wounds that never healed. But it couldn't take away the fundamental truth of what he accomplished, or the lives he saved, or the courage he displayed when it mattered most. From a dirt-poor sharecropper's shack in Texas to the most decorated soldier in American history, to a Hollywood star, to an early grave at age 45, Audie Murphy's life was a journey that seems almost impossible to believe. But every word of it is true, documented in military records and witnessed by hundreds of people who served with him and fought beside him. He was real. His courage was real. His struggles were real. And his legacy continues to inspire people more than 50 years after his death. That baby-faced kid who everyone said was too small to be a soldier proved them all wrong in the most spectacular way possible. And his story reminds us that true heroism comes in all sizes and from the most unexpected places.